welcome to this week's Subscriber Sunday video. So, just my usual little spiel on what this video is. This video is a place for subscribers to talk about their weight loss for the week, and we want to hear about your successes, your challenges, how your week went, how your any plans for next week, what kind of a plan you're on, any changes you're making to your weight loss plan, and if you want to share your weight loss with us and how much you have left to lose to goal. If you're just starting out, do you need any advice? Because everybody here is so positive, so inspirational and motivating, and I just wanted a place for everybody to share that with each other. So, and also other YouTubers usually chime in down below, and they can give great advice too. So, this week, and then we have a little topic that we talk about, and we talk about it in the comments. So, last week we had talked about some ideas for getting through holiday events. Everybody's going to have, some kind of maybe holiday parties coming up, or events at work. I mean, I know really the only thing I have coming up is a couple things for work. And actually it's 6 days of eating at work that I'm going to have to overcome. And so we talked about some tips to get through that. So one of the tips that I gave was bringing your own dish to the party. And I think that that is one way to make sure you set yourself up for success. So, and then I think kind of going along with that is making some healthy swaps in recipes to cut down on like the oil and butter and sugar. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I have a few ideas, things that I found online, and things that I have tried. And if I've tried it, I'll let you know my what my experience was with it, whether it was good or bad. And then I want you guys to add on anything down below, any things that you guys have done, because I would love to hear your tips for replacing, higher point items in recipes. So let's get started. So first, I want to go over a few things and I think these are things that I do on pretty much a daily basis with most of my recipes. So most of these things kind of replace the oil and the high-fat dairy in foods. So number one is sauteing in water or broth. Usually anytime a recipe says to saute in oil, I usually don't do it. I find that you can get the same amount of flavor if you do it in some kind of broth, whether it just be vegetable broth, chicken broth, a beef broth type thing. Now, I find more success in lowering the points by using chicken broth or beef broth, because vegetable broth, I've noticed, tends to be based by potato starch, which adds points. So yes, I don't think I have ever been able to find a vegetable broth that does not have starch in it. I'm sure it's out there, but just locally. And my cat is jumping around on the bed, so if my camera's moving, that's why. So, but you can, like onion and garlic and any other kind of vegetables that you're sauteing in a pan. First sometimes I'll spray it with a little bit of cooking spray, and then I just put some broth in there. And you can even do water, but broth is going to add that flavor that the oil would be adding. And so I just saute them in there, and usually you just need just a little bit of broth, just like maybe a quarter cup, depending on what you're sauteing. And that has worked perfectly for me. I've not had any issues, whether I'm using my cast iron skillet or my Teflon pans. Number two, bake instead of frying. So almost anything that says you have to fry it, you can bake it. I hardly fry anything for myself. Now, my husband likes everything fried, so I fry all his food, but whether you're doing like pork, or you're doing any kind of beef patties, or you're doing chicken, it can all be baked. I bake everything, and I don't have any negative, really anything to say about that. I have not had any issues. I guess it's just a matter of taste. If you're always used to frying everything, it's going to be a huge shock to your taste, I would think, to start baking it. But that leads me into, which actually I don't have listed till number 4. So spices. Use spices and herbs. Use them. Just experiment with them. There are certain things you can look online for, things that go with chicken. Like I find that like chicken, I'll use like rosemary and thyme is great with chicken. Use those two with chicken and potatoes. Amazing. So you just have to find the combination. If you like spicy, use some cumin and some cayenne pepper. Garlic anything. What is not good with garlic? I mean, seriously. Garlic can go any kind of vegetable, any kind of meat. Just, yeah. And it's so that's a big tip, is use spices and herbs. You know, and I hardly use salt or anything. I use a little bit of pink Himalayan salt on my food, but it's almost always some kind of pepper, some kind of salt-free seasoning, onion powder. I have a ton of spices in my cupboard and I use them all. There's probably not one spice in there that I hardly ever use. Another one, braise, roast, microwave, or steam. Yeah, as another thing, kind of goes along with the baking. So instead of frying, you know, you can steam things, steam your vegetables. You can roast your meat, put it in a crock pot. Then you're not using any kind of oil or frying, and then you get that nice, good, tender meat. Using broth, you know, use broth instead of water. That's another thing that adds flavor. Any kind of recipe that it says to put in the crock pot, and it says to put water in there, even roast, I use broth instead of water in my beef roast. I use chicken broth in my pork tenderloins that I put in the crock pot. I use chicken broth for chicken when I'm making any kind of chicken recipe that says use water. I use broth. So it just adds flavor to something that otherwise may not have a lot of flavor to it without frying. So we're at number 5, replace high fat with low fat substitution. So I have a whole list of those kind of things, so we'll go into that here in a second. Almond milk, cashew milk, there's tons of plant milks out there that can be used, and I highly recommend any of those. I really like the cashew milk. It's really creamy, and that's something that I definitely highly recommend to use. And I've used it, and of course you have to be careful though, because there's some vanilla varieties out there that are unsweetened that you don't want to use in things that aren't a dessert. So in like dessert type things, I use the unsweetened vanilla varieties, but for just plain you know, recipes that savory, I guess you should say, I use just unsweetened cashew milk. Roasted garlic. So if you've never roasted garlic, it has an amazing flavor, and you can just take the whole like bulb of garlic and just roast it. Just look for some recipes out there and you just roast it, and it kind of makes it like into this paste, and you can use that in your recipes, and it is amazing, the flavor it will add. Just don't do it a lot because I kind of forget about it until I was writing all these things down. I was kind of, you know, just kind of forget about it. And then salt. I mean, don't be afraid to add a little bit of salt. I think pink Himalayan sea salt is so good for you from what I've read, and don't be afraid to use it just a little bit, because it will add, and a lot goes a long way. It will add some flavor to your food. So let's get into the different baking substitutions that I was talking about earlier. So like I said, some of these I've tried, some of them I have not. I would love to hear from you guys if you guys have tried them and how they worked for you. So the first one is replacing flour in recipes. So black beans. Now, and this is cup to cup. So 1 cup of flour, use 1 cup of black beans for 1 cup of flour. I know that I've read this is best in like cookies, cupcakes, and brownies. I made black bean brownies at one point. I believe it was when I was on low carb. I did not like them. I could really taste the black beans. It was not pleasant. But I have to say that was before I was eating black beans a lot. I may like it better now, and maybe it was just the recipe I used. I would really love to hear from you guys if you guys have used black beans in place of flour, how it worked out for you. So let me know down below. Sorry. I drink some of my water. I know I've also read you can use any kind of beans in place of flour, but I guess black beans I think are like the lower point beans. Okay, so here's a few things to replace butter. Avocado. And again, this is a cup to cup. So if it calls for a cup of butter, use a cup of avocado. So basically the conversion is the same. One thing that I did read is reduce your oven by 25 degrees if you're using avocado in the recipe, and you may have to increase your baking time. So I did use this recently in a recipe I showed you guys, and that was the banana avocado muffins. I think that's what they were called. Those were so good, guys. And that was on, I think it was it last week's Pinterest video? I think so, or a week before. I'm not sure. But anyway, I think it was a Pinterest win or fail video. And it was amazing. And you could not taste the avocado, and they were so moist and so tender. And that's, yeah, it was so good. So I do recommend that. And I'm curious to hear if you guys have used it in any other way. Another way with butter is bananas, and again is cup to cup. Again, reduce your cooking time, though, is reduced by about 25%. I don't know why, but that's just what I've read, so that's what I try to do. Again, I've used this in several recipes, and it's always worked out really well. I do, though, think the avocado might add a little bit more moistness to it. I think it's just because, I mean, I don't know, maybe those muffins, because they have banana and avocado in them, maybe that did it, but when I did some kind of muffin with banana and applesauce, they weren't quite as moist as they could be. And so I feel like the avocado might be more of a way to go for that butter. And then butter and applesauce. So this is the conversion is a little bit different. You only use a half a cup of applesauce to a cup of butter. And actually, one of the tips that I read, which I have not tried yet, so I'll be curious to hear if you guys have tried this, is to actually use a combination of applesauce and avocado. So like a half a cup of applesauce and a half a cup of avocado. And I've heard that that makes a really good substitution for butter. So I'll be curious to hear if you guys have ever tried that. Another thing for butter is Greek yogurt. I've never tried this. I don't know if I've ever used Greek yogurt in place of anything but sour cream. So, I'd be curious to hear if you guys have tried this, but this is what I was reading. So 1 cup of butter would be the same as 1 cup of Greek yogurt would be the same as 1 cup of butter. And so now sugar substitute. I have tried this before, and that's applesauce. One thing you need to do, though, that I have noticed is reducing the amount of liquid, and I reduced it by like 1/4 of a cup. So like if it asked for like a cup of water or juice or something, then you only put 3/4 of a cup. So that type of thing, you ask for half a cup, you only put 1/4 cup. And then and then you add the applesauce in is cup for cup. So if it asks for a cup of sugar, you do a cup of applesauce. But reduce your liquid. So then the next thing, replacing eggs in recipes. Egg whites, of course. So I don't know if you guys didn't know, but 2 egg whites is the same as 1 egg. So I use egg beaters, or I use the all whites that you can get. I think they're called all whites, something like that. Depending if you want a yellow. For me, it kind of tricks my brain if I use the egg beaters. That makes me feel like I'm really using eggs. I don't know. I know. It's just like one of those things. So, so 2 egg whites equals 1 full egg. And I've used that in recipes. I've never, ever noticed a difference in recipes. I've used it in cookies and cakes and breads and even savory recipes. When it asks for an egg, I use egg whites. Just automatically do it. Turkey meatloaf, regular meatloaf. It's just kind of now, it's kind of a habit to do it. I hardly ever use real eggs. Not real eggs, they're real eggs, but you know what I mean, whole eggs. Hardly ever use whole eggs besides if I'm just eating hard-boiled eggs, which I do eat a lot of hard-boiled eggs. So it's not like I'm afraid of eggs. I just know this lowers the points in baked goods. And that's why I use the egg white substitution. It has nothing to do with me afraid to eat the yolk. I have no problem with that. It's more of lowering the points. Another thing, you can use bananas for eggs too. So 1 banana is equivalent to 2 eggs. And I have done that before and have never had any kind of issues with it. I feel like banana is a really good substitute for anything at all. I mean, it's really good, but make sure your banana is really ripe, because I have noticed that if my bananas aren't really ripe, you don't get the sweetness and the moisture of the baked goods. And the final thing, if you're using mayonnaise, anything calls for mayonnaise, you can use avocado, you can use Greek yogurt, fat-free sour cream is kind of, but I mean, it's kind of tart. So you might want to add a little bit of maybe sweetener or something with it, because mayo, you know, has a little bit of sweetness to it. But in like chicken salad, I use fat-free mayo, so it's not, I've never really had to do it. I know a lot of people don't like the fat-free mayos, but I've never had an issue with it because I use a lot of herbs and spices in like my chicken salad, so I don't notice that kind of flavor that people don't like in fat-free mayo. But I am interested. I haven't tried this with the avocado, and so I'm interested in that. But it would add points, so you'd have to be, depending on how many points. But with like chicken, with like the canned chicken I get from my chicken salads, it's not very many points to begin with, and so I'm kind of curious about that. Only thing is the avocado's not going to last, so you're going to have to eat it pretty quickly. So that's another thing. So anyway, I would love to hear what you guys think below of my little list of things, and give me any of your ideas that you guys have for baking substitutions, cooking substitutions. ways that you flavor your food to make it lower points but high flavor. So I would love to hear from you guys. And plus, make sure you leave down below how you guys did for weigh-in this week. As you guys see, I didn't have a weigh-in video up this week because I chose not to weigh in because of Thanksgiving, and I had family here and I was busy, and I just decided that I'm going to wait until next Friday, so there will be a weigh-in video this Friday. But I'd love to hear from you guys, and I know some of you guys have already told me, and a lot of you guys did fantastic this week, and I am so proud of you guys. And yeah, so let's motivate and inspire each other down in the comments below, and I will see you on the next video.